Hi there, everyone. My name is Neil Welch. I oversee the testing and lab services at the UPMC Sports Surgery Clinic in Santry. I'm going to talk to you today about getting fit for your skiing holiday in 2 weeks' time. Okay, I'm going to expand on that a little bit as well as we go through. What I think it is worth doing is kind of revisiting skiing a little bit. So I'm just going to show you a clip here of what the very highest level looks like. What I wanted you to do is just to get a bit of a sense of some of the forces that are involved during skiing, the movements that we have to undertake. Oftentimes, I think we perceive skiing as quite a leisurely activity, but the harder we ski, the higher the intensity the exercise becomes. So we can see the amount of strength that's required in order to be able to put weight onto the ski, in order to be able to create turns. We can see here in slow motion the body positions that are required and the flexibility that's needed in order to be able to position ourselves in order to make a turn. And okay, none of us is going to be skiing this fast on our holiday, but I think it just gives you a bit of a sense, or the aim of it is to give you a bit of a sense that it's a relatively tough physical activity that we're undertaking. So the big question, possibly one we've tuned in for this talk: how do I get fit for skiing in 2 weeks? Well, the answer is you don't. Now, don't worry, the talk isn't going to end there. What I'm going to do is hopefully give you a few tips where you can get a little bit fitter and a little bit more prepared if you have left it to the last minute, but hopefully help you to build some behaviors that you can build into your weekly lifestyle, I guess, and prepare you for any kind of future endeavors. So the aims, I want to highlight the physical demands of skiing and snowboarding. And when I'm talking skiing, I'm going to encompass both sports. I'm going to give you some specific guidance to help you get fitter prior to your holiday. And then also help you plan in order to be able to get fitter before you go and maybe stay fitter throughout your day-to-day life. Okay, and why can I talk about this stuff? Well, it seems like a very long time ago, and it is 15 years ago. I was working as a strength and conditioning coach with the England's development ski team. My role there was to help prepare the skiers for the physical demand of their sport. So I have a couple of photos here from some training camps. The English ski team isn't the best funded, and it might surprise you to learn. And so the facilities we had available were homemade. So what you see on the left is a gym we built in the garage of the accommodation we were staying at. Also served as a bit of a kit room and a ski prep area. And on the right-hand side, this is an early year camp. Now, ski racing is a little bit different in terms of the snow demand. They actually quite like hard packing and icy conditions, so early season training camps aren't a problem. This is a resort in Italy called Santa Cario, where we go out and try and marry some of the what we call the dry land conditioning, so the off snow stuff, alongside some of the preparations for the technical training. So I've got a pretty decent understanding of the physical demands of the sport from that work. Now, that said, there are some very specific challenges that we have to negotiate when we're going on a ski holiday. So the first is that we only do it for 1, maybe 2 weeks a year if we're very lucky. What that means is it's very difficult to specifically condition for skiing when you only do it for 5 or 6 days per year. So that offers its own demands. Oftentimes, and this is certainly off the back of speaking to patients who we might see come through the clinic, often there's very little physical preparation. Some of us very much see going skiing as a holiday. We don't necessarily change our behaviors, and certainly some of us are quite sedentary in those behaviors. So we're moving into an activity that is quite physical off the back of doing a lot less physical activity prior to that. Then the makeup of the holiday itself, you buy a lift ticket for 5 or 6 days. We don't like to see that money go to waste, and so we're going to ski back-to-back days. Essentially, you're doing the equivalent of getting running shoes on and trying to run a 10K for 5 or 6 days on the bounce. And we all know we'd find that incredibly challenging. We then throw into the mix oftentimes reduced sleep. So whether that's self-induced through enjoyment on a holiday, or potentially children not settling into a different routine, that is often impacted. And then inadequate recovery. So a bucket of melted cheese and a few pints or glasses of red wine isn't always the best recovery from a day's physical activity. So these are some of the innate challenges that we have when we go away. The physical demands of skiing are relatively straightforward. I'm not going to go into huge depth here. But we saw on the video there, we need to create pressure on the boot and the ski in order to be able to initiate the turn. That requires some force and hence some strength. Then in order to be able to hold our edge during the turn, we have to undergo what we call eccentric contractions to be able to tolerate those forces. So the strength demand, particularly on the bottom ski on each turn. And then we have some of the demands of the holiday itself. So being able to tolerate multiple runs. And oftentimes some of us want to ski as many vertical meters as we can. We have tracking apps for that. We do a top to run bottom. So we want to do multiple runs each day, and we want to do that on consecutive days. And the stronger you are, the better able you are to tolerate those that level of activity and that volume of physical activity. On the other side of the coin, we have fitness. So there's an aerobic demand to skiing. So we know that when we get to the bottom of a run, we can feel out of breath. And again, the faster we ski and the more intense we ski, the more out of breath we do get. Aerobic capacity also helps us to recover between runs. So skiing isn't purely aerobic. There's an anaerobic element to it, which is where we talk about building up metabolites. People talk about building up lactate in muscle. Our aerobic system helps us to clear that and recover between runs. So being fit is important to be able to tolerate that. And then, again, depending on the resort we select, many of us will select a resort at higher altitude to be slightly more snow shore. So we are going to be operating at altitude, and high levels of fitness is going to help us to do that. So when I'm talking about fitness or aerobic fitness, essentially this is the ability of the body to transport and use oxygen during physical activity. Again, in order to be able to access some of the energy that we have stored, basically in fat, that reaction requires oxygen. And that reaction is relatively slow, which is why we tend to use aerobic pathways during lower intensity activities where there's not a high speed demand on us. So aerobic conditioning, aerobic fitness usually relates to activity that you can do for a relatively long period of time. So essentially over a minute and anything up to a couple of hours. So that's what I'm talking about when we're talking aerobic fitness. In terms of actual measurement of fitness, VO2 max, this is the maximum amount of oxygen that you can use during intense physical activity. We measure it here in clinic, and it's available for measure across a few of our UPMC sites. We measure it using a gas analyzer or a treadmill or a bike, and it gives us a really accurate measure of how fit you are. And the reason I put the picture of the biathlete here, so this is somebody who cross-country skis and then shoots at a target. These athletes are the fittest on earth. You know, they live or born and grew up at usually high altitude and train in a very intense endurance activity. So they have very, very high VO2 maxes. But having some sort of measure of your aerobic fitness is a good way to understand what sort of level you're at the moment prior to your holiday, or even just for general health. But it changes, okay? And this is one reason why it's a good idea to start understanding your own aerobic fitness. These changes happen throughout our lives. So as we age, we tend to lose fitness levels. And this is often dependent on the type of activity levels that we partake in. So if we play a lot of field sports during our teens, 20s, early 30s, and we stop, then we don't have an activity in order to be able to maintain our aerobic fitness. So we lose levels. If we're more conditioning focused, so if say we're a runner or a cyclist or a triathlete, oftentimes we'll maintain high levels of VO2 maxes to late 30s, early 40s. But we lose fitness basically based on the amount of training that we do. So if our activity levels change, we have different lifestyle changes, we take on study, we have busy periods at work, or children get in the way, we lose fitness. If we have periods of illness, so we're in hospital for a couple of weeks, for example, or and COVID would have had a big impact on this as well, then we lose fitness, and it doesn't come back by itself. You know, your body gets used to what you give it, and you need to train it in order to be able to recover those fitness qualities. There's some elements of our fitness is genetically determined by stuff like our size, so that contributes to our lung size and the size of our hearts. but we can all improve it. And I imagine there's very few of us who are engaged in the talk tonight that has reached our peak. So we can definitely all improve. But beyond skiing and I guess moving into general health, maintaining high levels of aerobic fitness is important. We know it reduces the risk of cardiac arrest and stroke. And so avoiding these type of illness events through our lifestyle is obviously very important. It's incredibly important for weight management. So exercise is often perceived as being important for weight loss. It's actually the other way around. It has very little bearing on the amount of weight we lose. That's all diet-based. But it is really important for not putting weight on. So as soon as we stop aerobic conditioning, we tend to pile on the pounds. We know there are mental health benefits to aerobic training as well. People talk about the runner's high, but we have social elements, feeling good about our body, and a kind of wider array of mental health changes off the back of physical activity. We feel better, we have increased energy levels, and as the reason we're here for the talk today, we have more enjoyment in our skiing. So, how do you get fit? Well, first of all, you have to pick an activity. And we don't get fit by sitting down watching Netflix. So there are plenty to pick from. I've just given a small list here between running, cycling, rowing, spin classes, group training. These could be kind of free weights type classes, and boxercise, this type of stuff. A myriad of options in your local gym. Companies like Bike, Row, Ski, who are very conditioning focused, power walking, rollerblading, unicycling, whatever it is, anything that gets us a little bit out of breath. And the reason I say you've got to pick an exercise, it has to be enjoyable as well. I'll come on to why that's important shortly. Then we broadly have to pick an intensity. So we have to figure out how hard we want to exercise at. And again, oftentimes I think this is driven by what we're comfortable doing. Some people prefer a bit of a blowout, and they'll reach instead for the high intensity interval training. That's the HIIT there, because they prefer to get very out of breath, get very hot and sweaty very quickly. Some people don't enjoy that, and they prefer steady state, lower intensity form of exercise, going out for a longer time period. But it's personal preference. And both of these intensities will improve your aerobic fitness. But the most important one is picking one that you will do. And in terms of the frequency and the volume, 1 to 2 times a week and up to 3 hours is enough in order to be able to reduce risk of cardiac episodes and stroke. Obviously, you can exercise for more than that, but as a bit of a baseline, if you're looking to try and improve health outcomes and get a little bit fitter, the actual requirement isn't that high. So in terms of exercise intensity, generally we measure this using heart rate. Now, a lot of wrist-worn devices will be able to give you a heart rate measure. And while it gets less accurate, the higher the intensity that you go, it should give you a pretty decent ballpark. If you do have access to a chest-worn heart rate monitor with your watch, then that's a much more accurate version. And essentially, we're looking at different training zones based on the percentage of your maximum heart rate. Now, in terms of building aerobic conditioning, aerobic fitness, then zone 1 and zone 2 is really all you need. So relatively low intensities, quite low intensities there, 50 to 60 and 60 to 70% of your maximum. And provided we spend enough volume up to 3 hours a week, then we're going to get a little bit fitter. So you don't always have to exercise to very high levels where you're feeling very out of breath and fatigued in order to be able to improve your fitness. And this leads then to the type of sessions that we can do. And again, like you're looking at a cascade in terms of intensity. So 30 minutes of a low intensity exercise, going out for a fast walk, a jog, a bike ride at zone 1 will get you fitter. And doing that for multiple sessions over a long period of time helps you to stay fit. If we're a little bit tighter on time, or we prefer to be working at a slightly higher intensity, then the middle row there, 4 lots of 4-minute work with 2 minutes rest between repetitions and a short warm up. We'll have you done in about the same time, about 30 minutes, but working at a slightly higher intensity at zone 3. And then the final one, this is when we want a big blowout. So we're doing 45 seconds of high intensity work up at zone 4 or 5, with 90 seconds rest between reps, and again, a short warm up. Now, all of those sessions will take a short period of time, but if we do them a couple of times a week, will help to build your aerobic fitness. And this is all doable a couple of times a week in the run into your ski holiday. So we've got some idea of the sessions, but what is the true secret to getting and staying fit? Well, it's simple. It's consistency. I'm sure there's lots of that I'm talking about today in the session that isn't new to you. You all know that in order to be able to get and stay fit, you need to be able to do it over a longer period of time. But building consistency is essentially forming a habit, and there's certain things that you can do in order to be able to help do that. So the first is to create a schedule, is to look at your week, see what you're normally doing, and find a window where you can do this exercise. So work around your study, work around your work around the picking the kids up, and find a couple of windows a week where you can do the volume of exercise that you're looking to try and do. Then you want to set up a reward structure. Forming habits is about creating positivity around the activity that you're doing. And if you're rewarded for doing it, that helps to build the habit. So it might be, if you're looking to do 2 sessions a week, and you set out a month on your calendar, if you do your 8 or 9 or 10 sessions, depending how the month falls, if you complete all of those sessions, then you might reward yourself with takeaway pizza, a trip to the cinema. Again, like you can pick the reward structure, but it will help to add buy-in to your training. Accountability is often very effective. So this could be starting a training program or a training routine with somebody. So whether it's a partner, a sibling, a friend, even just engaging the services of a coach, essentially makes you feel a little bit sheepish if you don't do it. But that accountability is often important for people and helps keep them on the line. And again, once that habit is formed, then you're more accountable to yourself necessarily than somebody else. Setting targets is also a good way to build consistency and drive and motivation. So it might be that you're looking to try and get a certain 5K time and achieve that. It might be that you're looking for a certain volume of training across a period of time, across a year, across a month. And again, it can be very rewarding to hit those targets in the same way that if you have a to-do list and you cross off all the tasks, it feels good. That's what we're looking to try and do around your fitness training. For some people, sociability is very important. So this is where sports or activities like CrossFit have become really popular, because it's not just about the exercise, it's the friendships that are formed around it. Some of us aren't. Some people are happy jumping on a bike for an hour or two by themselves with the headphones on or without headphones and just get into their own headspace. But if sociability is something that's important to you, I think it's a good idea in order to be able to build this into your training. Measurement and seeing progress, again, kind of fits in with the targets. Using the apps on the phone in order to be able to track your volume and stuff like your resting heart rate is, again, another measure of fitness. Maybe the weight lifted if you're using weight training in order to be able to build a little bit of fitness. Anything that helps drive consistency. And then the final one, as I talked about, is assessment. So if, say, for example, you come in and have your VO2 max measured, you go away and train for 8 to 10 weeks and come back and remeasure, then first of all, there's a bit of accountability. We have some targets, and then you can actually see in black and white that you've made some progress. And again, that helps to drive some consistency. So in terms of some tips for enjoying your holiday, and hopefully I kind of banged the drum enough throughout the talk here, to do some aerobic fitness work in the lead-in. Even if it's 2 weeks out, if you get 4 sessions in, you're going to be a little bit fitter and you're going to find your holiday a little bit easier. If possible, try and use mixed methods. So I know I haven't really touched on strength work today, but if you can do some fitness and some strength work, it's going to help you tolerate the demands of skiing much more. And again, you'll get more enjoyment out of your holiday. Next, I'd say take regular breaks. Especially if you're tired, sometimes a little bit hungover, but taking regular breaks is going to be important. That's going to lead to fewer mistakes. And if skiing at very high intensity, again, it's just worth bearing in mind that your body's going to take its toll on its body, again, particularly towards the end of the week. So taking regular breaks to recover is going to be very important. This is quite a specific one to skiing. But when you get your skis, like if you don't have your own, you're renting them, or even if you do have your own, you have them set up, just use the recommended DIN settings on the binding. So a DIN setting is how tight the boot is held into the ski. These are set to an international standard. If you go out to this and you injure, then any insurance will be invalidated. But it's also safer. The ski has to release in order to be able to not put the rotation loads on the knee. And it's done based on your height, your weight, and your ski ability. If you crank those up and the ski doesn't release and you fall, then you're at serious risk of a bad particular knee injury there. From a nutrition perspective, eat breakfast. No, you don't always feel like it again, depending on how the day before has gone. But that's important to make sure we have the fuel in order to be able to tolerate the training demand or the activity demand, and then hydrate throughout the day and have a little bit of a plan for it. I know it's challenging sometimes on the hill to figure out what cafe you can stop off, and getting charged €8 for a cup of coffee and a small glass of tap water on the side. So if you can carry a bottle of water or CamelBak with you, something like that, in order to be able to make sure you stay hydrated, definitely do. Be wary of fatigue. So as I said, towards the end of the week, but at the end of the day, and then also changing snow conditions. So particularly if we have a better conditions this year and a little bit more snow, you'll start to get very mogully conditions towards the end of the day with ice in between those moguls. That's going to be much more challenging often than the skiing at the beginning of the day. So again, take regular breaks, make sure you're fueled at lunchtime. And if you start to feel tired, it's okay to pull in for the end of the day. And then ski at your own pace at level. Okay, and again, I know this is challenging depending on who you're skiing with, but you'll massively reduce your risk of injury and increase your enjoyment because you won't be as tired when you ski at your own at a pace you're comfortable at and a level intensity that you're comfortable at. The final thing then is for you to enjoy your holiday. If you have any questions at all, I'm free to answer them.